It's interesting how people that um, I met earlier in the Camino, I bump back into them again. And this idea of bumping back into, and let's call it serendipitous or providential meetings, also happen on the Camino. So, first thing I have to say about going from uh, how do I pronounce that? Mansilla de Las Mulas to León. It was a shorter trip, so which I really enjoyed the fact that it was shorter. In fact, I'm in León now, and you might be able to hear the cathedral bells in the background. Um, so this night, when I left in the morning, it was the weirdest night's sleep because at 3 in the morning, there's this outdoor festival going on with this uh, sort of like this deep beat kind of rave type of party going on uh, with laser light shows into the sky, and uh, it's like 3:15 in the morning, right? And so I ended up uh, contacting one of my kids 6 hours behind, right? So for them, it's in the middle, it's just in the evening, and I said, I'm gonna go check this out. So I climbed out of bed, I got dressed, and I went out to the party. I took a video. I had a live like FaceTime going on as I'm walking towards this party, and my daughter's like, "Dad, it's a rave. Get out of there." She was concerned for my health. Yeah, no, this is like a community activity. Showing up 3:15 in the morning. It is like a rock concert with like again this deep beat, more like a DJ playing this kind of DJ type music with all kinds of fancy lights and screens and very, very loud and sending off like explosive confetti, and they had these like smoke cannon things, and oh yeah, by the way, and there was the mom with the kid in the stroller, and there's the grandma and the grandpa, and there's the middle-aged folks, and there's the people in the 30s and the 20s, and then oh yeah, a whole bunch of teenagers too, and kids. Like, who are these people? And interestingly, this same group I had encountered before, way back in Puerta de la Reina. So I don't know, maybe 12, 13 days ago. They were further uh, east of here, and they finally caught me. They caught up to me, and their show reached town. So I had an encore performance, but this time I just wasn't listening through the window. This time I actually went out and had a chance to watch them perform, caught some videos, send them off to my kids. And my oldest daughter, who was in Spain a couple months ago, was like, "Yeah, Dad, this was happening like every night when I was in Spain where she was." And so it's part of the culture. It's just a very different thing. All right. One of the things I enjoyed about this particular day of walking was that I had just walked 2 24-mile days, and this day was going to be half that. And it was going to lead to a rest day. So I was like, you know what? I don't have to hurry to get in. I can take my time. And so I got up later than I ever did. I got up at 7:30 and ended up wandering over to the communal breakfast, and I bumped into a lady from day two, a lady that I met a little bit. She wasn't part of the group of the three ladies that I was walking with that I told the story about, but she was a friend of theirs, and I met her briefly, and then she zoomed on, and I bumped into her again. And the interesting thing is that I'd been praying for her. I felt when I first met her that she was someone who was like on a search, and it was kind of her life was a bit of a kind of a Camino life. And so she came right over to me, sat down, and started chatting, and had a nice talk. And then she finished her breakfast, got up, and left. So I got up, I went to the local supermarket, picked up some fruit and goodies, and off I went. And I ended up catching up to her. She had stopped to take a break, and I passed by her again and kept on going. And I would end up seeing her later that day in León, where she was sitting down and having a bite to eat. And so it's interesting how these people keep coming and keep dropping into a pilgrim's life. Now, I think that's something that's a very common experience for people that are walking the Camino, especially when they're staying in the normal stages. And I haven't been doing that. And so she also hadn't been doing that. And so that was one of the reasons we ended up connecting. We came back together. Um, and so there's a relevance to this because there's a way in which people that are part of your life will play a part in one moment. And then you know what? They just might play another part later or even again further down the road. You never know the connecting points that God's going to have for you. But one of the things that I'll do is that when I have a contact with someone that's meaningful, I will often wonder whether, or it's out of the ordinary. It just doesn't have to be meaningful. It's out of the ordinary. It's like a striking, like, boom. It might be someone did something that was really like loud and obnoxious or whatever in front of me. And my response will be internally, you know what you just did? You just got on my prayer list. God got your attention. God got my attention to pray for you. And I'm going to just keep praying for you now. One time, an example of how this happened, it was Corpus Christi Sunday, and there was a Eucharistic procession. They were carrying the Blessed Sacrament in a monstrance from one church to the other. And we were in a big line of people, hundreds and hundreds of people long, going from church to church. And we happened to be crossing the highway on a bridge. And this truck comes by, ends up slowing down, and ends up screaming, "God hates us all." Peels out in his truck, big spinny of the back wheels, and just peels off and takes off out of there. And he did it relatively close to where I was with my family. And I said to my kids, I said, you know what that guy just did? He just got onto our prayer list. Pray for him. God knew that that guy needed prayers. And for some mysterious reason, he ended up taking the road that would lead him right past us, that we would have that contact, and something stirred in him to say, I need to voice this message. And the only thing he effectively did was get a whole bunch of people to pray for him. And so pay attention to, I'm not saying people are going to have to skid in front of your house and shout a crazy message to get your attention, but I want you to be open to the idea that God will have people that get brought close to your life for you to pray for when you are maybe least expecting it, when you are not really ready for it. So I want to finish because I have two other stories related to that. And the first one was when I ended up arriving in León, I was able to get settled in my space where I was going to be able to relax a bit more, which was wonderful. But I had to wait for my room to be ready. And so I decided to go up to the cathedral, and I was about to go into the cathedral. Carrie calls, and I had made an agreement with Carrie that whenever she calls, I'd just stop what I was doing and I would go and I would attend to her if it was at all possible. And so I didn't go into the cathedral. I ended up coming back out and sitting in the plaza, just looking at the cathedral, and was on the phone talking with her. And we were just talking about whatever. And when we were done, I happened to turn to the left, and I noticed sitting at one of the little outdoor bar areas was a fellow. I'm like, wait a minute, is that Dennis? And sure enough, there's a fellow from the Seattle area who I had connected with a little bit, and he was flying into León to start the Camino from León, and he was arriving on Saturday, the 14th. And that's all I knew. That's all I knew. And lo and behold, I looked to the left, and there he is sitting at the table. And so I finished my call. I go walking up to him, and it was like, what is this, Tom? And it was a really neat little reunion. And we ended up going to praying together, going to mass together, and shared shops, swapped some stories together. He's already had a couple in happened on his Camino, and as he was launching on Sunday. And so as he as he was launching on Sunday, and I just wished him well and Godspeed, and off he went. And I'm confident I'll bump into him along the way. But he really wanted to just kind of get launched by himself. Well, while we were praying, he and I, in the chapel, there was a priest praying in the row in front of us, and we had a chance to say hello to him. And then when we went to mass that night, celebrating the feast of the triumph of the cross, the exaltation of the cross, that priest that was in front of us, and another priest were concelebrating with the priest that was presiding. After that mass, I ended up going up to the priests and said, "Fathers, I just am thrilled that you're here. I'd love to be able to visit with you a little bit if you'd like." And when we were introduced, we introduced ourselves to the priest when we were in the chapel, just really briefly. Dennis, who was with me, said, "Oh, Tom's a Catholic theologian." And when we met up again, he said, "What's your name again?" And I said, "Oh, it's Tom Curran." He said, "I think I have one of your books." And sure enough, my book on the Mass, he was familiar with that book on the Mass. And so we ended up sitting down, the three of us, and had a very engaging conversation. And it was fascinating in 100 ways. But just to say, I had been praying for conversations that would be a blessing and an inspiration to me. I've been in many conversations in the first 18 days where I've been the one who's been doing most of the pouring out, and I was very interested in having conversations that were going to be more mutual or pouring into me. And this would be one of those conversations that was more mutual and just really very interesting and engaging. And I'll have more to say about that, but there was also some turbulence in the conversation. And we kind of ended in a turbulent moment where I was kind of challenging and pushing in a way that they didn't appreciate. And so, but we parted, I think, on a decent note, even though it was kind of late at night for them. And what ends up happening is that the next day or tomorrow, I bump into them. I end up getting up early. And for me, it's kind of late because I can sleep in. It's my day off. But I'm like, let me just get a coffee and some breakfast, and then I'm gonna, use this day to really relax, but also catch up on videos. And so went to this little bar, and sure enough, the two priests come in. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what a great, thank you, Lord, for the chance to be able to just connect with them again. And so another touch point, this time I switched the contacts on WhatsApp to be able to stay in touch. And it gave me a chance to say, I'm sorry it ended the way it did. I think there's so much more that we would have an opportunity to talk about if that was something you're interested in. He said, yes, absolutely. And so I'm really grateful for that chance to kind of round out that circle of communication. So this day was a day of surprising reunions, surprising reconnections. And the last thing I'll say is that tomorrow, on my day off, I end up meeting a couple that I had walked with a few days before, which I had mentioned to you previously. And I had thought that I didn't have that much of an impact on them, that I was present and I didn't press in. I was respectful and really enjoyed them. Well, when they saw me, they jumped up and gave me a hug, and it was like, I was their long lost companion. And we ended up having a great conversation. They introduced me to another couple that I'm probably going to meet up with in a couple of days. And they were so grateful to be able to reconnect again and share information. And all that happened because I walked into a restaurant at close to the same time. When they were there, they had just walked in to sit down and get something to eat. And so it's amazing how, again, you could just call these happy coincidences, or you could say, God's providence is at work, connecting us to people's lives in order to be able to be praying for them or to speak into their lives or have them speak into our lives. So be open to that.